Hey everybody, this is Sai with the Rambling Film Group podcast. Today we're going to be doing a movie review episode. It's a movie we've all been looking forward to, and a lot of you guys have that interact with us on the page. You guys have been looking forward to as well. It is Jordan Peele's second film. He hit us with Get Out first last year, and now this year we got Us, one of the most highly anticipated movies of the year. So really excited that it's finally here. But before we go into it, want to introduce my co-host that we have here today. First, we got my man Chuck. How are you doing, man?
Doing pretty good. Yeah, looking forward to talking about the movie.
Great. And then we also have Kelsey. How you doing today, Kels?
I'm good. Hi, guys.
Perfect. So I'll go ahead and start us off. I won't go too far into it. I'll just give like a little tidbit about it. And some of the things that I like, maybe a couple of things that I didn't like so much. We can just kind of go from there. I will start off because I mentioned when I posted on it on Facebook, I mentioned I would explain why I didn't think that these were. After seeing Us, I don't look at Get Out or Us as horror movies, and there's a couple of reasons here. A, they're not really the scariest films. Like they're not really out there to just pure scare you. It's more to it's more to make you think about society, because a lot of the things that happen in the movies, even though they're far out there, I don't think anybody would be surprised if like one day you found out that wealthy white people were found a way to like put their souls or their beings into black people and control that body. Again, it is out there, but would I be completely just utterly shocked that it was possible? Not really. And the same thing with Us, where the government hides things from us all the time. So to find out that there's like this, basically the mole people who were a government clone project that just went wrong, I wouldn't be so shocked if that was true either. So he just does a real good job of taking somewhat real life situations and things you can actually see and putting it on film and showing it in a way that makes you think. But there are just some moments that, yeah, they make you feel weird inside. I won't say like it's a horrifying thing. It's just like you wouldn't want to put yourself in that situation or anybody else in that situation regardless. So that was just my thing. I kind of look at both of them more as what's the word I'm looking for? Mental thrillers. It's a weird category because they make you just think a lot, and the anticipation of like what's coming next and what information are going to be provided next kind of just, to me, mimics more of a thriller than it does a horror movie. So yeah, that's just my kind of opinion on that. And then as far as the overall movie, I thought it was really good. I thought it was fantastic. There's not too much in it that I didn't like. Oh, also, before we get into it, just so everybody knows, there will be spoilers.
Good call. Good call.
We are gonna have spoilers in this, so if you haven't seen it yet, beware. This is your warning right now.
Beware.
I think the one thing that jumped out to me, and again, it's mostly because I know Chuck really cares about scores and how music is used in movies and how it can affect the movie. I typically don't pay attention to that, but I couldn't help but pay attention to the way that music was used in this movie, and how you kind of even had to pay a little bit more attention to the lyrics of the songs and when they were being played. For example, when they played Niggas with Attitude, and the line is, fuck the police, coming straight from the underground, while the tethered are coming through the underground and starting to massacre people. It kind of just has that little tiny connection there that I don't think everybody probably would have noticed right off the bat. You just kind of saw it as a little bit of a humor moment because she's trying to call the police and she gets fuck the police. But I think, again, he just goes a little bit deeper than that. What else? And then I saw it earlier. I can't remember the name of it, but that first kind of creepy song that starts the movie, man, that one is really good. That one gets you ready for what you're getting ready to see, and some of the twists and turns that we get throughout the movie. But yeah, before we really dive into it, um, I think it was a great movie. Not too many complaints I can really have with it. I'm pretty sure we will go over some of the complaints we have. But with that being said, which one of you guys wants to kind of jump in?
You go.
Me go.
Mm-hmm.
You sure?
Mm-hmm.
I felt like you had your thoughts better formulated the first time we saw it. Well, I think a quick commentary that I'd have is I think I would disagree with your assessment of it being more of a thriller than a horror. I feel like it doesn't have to be. I mean, scary is just very relative, and like I feel like you can effectively something can be scary without like feeling you to grow in anxiety, and physically exhibit it. And I felt like just the nature of what's going on. Like I actually saw a quote just someone else's assessment of like what makes something a horror versus what makes something a thriller, and I really liked that reasoning. So I think I'm kind of gonna adopt that as my own going forward. Whereas they put it that horror, when you're viewing or reading whatever, interacting with horror, it's told at the through the perspective of the victims, whereas a thriller is why can't I talk again?
Through the perspective of the investigator.
Yes, of like who's trying to uncover whatever horrors might be getting done to people or whatnot. So like with that in mind, like I feel like this and Get Out, potentially even more so, like really fit that horror kind of definition, at least the one I'm adopting going forward. So but again, it's a completely relative, subjective thing. That's just my personal view on it. But the movie in and of itself, it's hard not to make a comparison to Get Out. I think I prefer overall storylines that are more straightforward, at least in the overall storyline. Like I don't have a problem if things tend to like can grow into a more abstract concept as we move along the very like clear, distinct storyline. But when everything is kind of more unclear and like kind of purposely so, it doesn't mesh with me as well. I think like that's a good way to just kind of describe my experience with the movie. While I did enjoy it, especially with seeing how everything kind of comes together at the end, I'd have to say like I didn't really, until the end, I didn't really feel satisfied with the story that I was watching, and the end helped it to become something that I was like, okay, that was solid. I enjoyed it, but I did not. And again, it's hard not to compare, and I don't mean to just compare to Get Out, but like it was a very different experience for me personally between the two films. I know it's not really fair to compare them because they are, again, like between like one's very abstract in nature, one's very like straightforward. Mm-hmm. But just I felt like there was and not saying that this is completely lacking in it, but I just felt like when I watched it the first time and the subsequent viewings, I felt like there was like just a very very impressive like cleverness and brilliance in the writing in Get Out that I didn't feel as much the first time seeing Us. I felt like for the most part, what was happening, I got it and got it fairly right away. But also that's just me. Like, that's hard to explain. Like, I'm sure there's stuff I missed. I'm sure there's stuff that I didn't get. But there wasn't anything. I didn't come out of it feeling like I need to see it again to make sure I got everything like I did previously. I think that's the best way I can say, kind of sum up my experience with the movie.
Yeah. Say like, yeah,
Or,
decide you have something to like respond.
I did, and then I totally forgot what it was because it was something Chuck specifically said, like maybe like 2 or 3 minutes ago, and I was going to comment on it, and now I can't remember. So
was it about it being a horror versus a thriller?
No. Because that's completely objective, and I totally get that aspect of it. Just to me, and I guess it's just more so about like what kind of horror movies I like. I guess that probably has something more to do with it. Is if I were to look at this as just a horror movie, I probably wouldn't look at it the same way. But I do love the movie. It just didn't come off as a horror to me. Honestly, actually I was talking about this before. I look at both Get Out and Us as kind of a documentary where it kind of documents what's going on in a specific time frame and reveals to you what's happening. And obviously, yes, it's fake, but it kind of lays out a story of what's happening in the real world and how it has affected, people within that, what's going on. And again, I kind of watch a ton of documentaries. And so like when stuff kind of comes off that way, I look at it that way. And it's not a slight to the movie at all. It's still like wonderful. It is damn near perfect. In my opinion, we're close to it. That's what I was gonna say. Between the two movies, as far as like Get Out and Us, first of all, I haven't even thought in my head to compare the two. Like I've kind of I enjoyed both. They both are, like you said, they're kind of presented to you differently, and I just haven't really thought to compare the two for any reason, because I also feel like since they're presented to you differently, it really, like you mentioned, it's not necessarily fair to compare the two. But I will say, from jump, I did enjoy Us a little bit more than I did Get Out. I was a bit more surprised at what the ending was at Get Out, because it's our first like Jordan Peele movie. So going into Us, I kind of knew what to expect at the end, that it would be a little bit left field. But just like everything overall, the story, the cinematography, the music and everything, I just left a little bit more satisfied with Us than I did Get Out.
Gotcha.
Interesting. Yeah, it was the opposite for me. I left more satisfied with Get Out than with Us. And in my mind, I think it was more natural to compare them. It's interesting that you didn't. They are very different movies. And I feel like a lot of times when I am comparing horror films, I do tend to compare based off of like the subgenre as opposed to the creators. But I feel like with these two movies, for some reason, and it's props to Jordan for pulling it off, is like you can tell it's his work, like it's his craftsmanship, And so I think that's kind of what makes me naturally want to compare them, because they're very distinct from other horror films that we get today on the large scale. Mm-hmm. And I think for that reason, it's kind of natural for me to compare them, because you do see a different like style and take and things like that. But yeah, I kind of am agreeing with Charles. I feel like this is a horror. For me, I think something's a horror film whenever, if I had been in that person's shoes, I would feel fear. So I don't necessarily have to feel the actual fear. But if it's a scary situation, I feel like it's a horror. Whereas like mental thriller, kind of like what you were saying, I kind of think of like, have you guys seen that movie Memento? Mm-hmm. Right, where like there's some like creepy and like horror-ish elements to it, but I feel like it's also a movie kind of like these two, where it makes you think and it makes you anticipate like, okay, what little piece of information are we going to get next and things like that. But at the same time, that's very much a thriller as opposed to horror. Whatever. Honestly, that doesn't even matter. But yeah, I enjoyed the movie for the most part. I think I just left feeling, to use your word, a little bit like I was lacking some of the cleverness that I got in Get Out. And so because it is natural, I do kind of compare the two. So I apologize for that if that offends anybody. But I
don't think
without what?
Just real quick, if anybody is offended by the fact that you compared the two, like, get off her dick, okay? Just get off your dick.
Yeah, because I get that they're not the same movie. I get that they're not a part of like a trilogy or a set or something like that. But I explained before.
Real quick, he did say that he sees them as kind of like a social trilogy. We got a back to it. Actually, I remember seeing something like not long after Get Out came out that Jordan was planning like, I think it was a trilogy. It might have been more, but basically a series of like these social horror.
So yeah, he said. I remember that because he said the same person that interviewed him that when he got that statement interviewed him again for us. He said during Get Out in his next movie he was going to weave the universe into it and kind of see what happens from there. And that's when the guy, when he re-interviewed him for us, he asked him if there was any connection, between us and Get Out. And Jordan Peele was like, eh.
That's him basically saying, like, either, one, I don't want to tell you yet because I'm going to pull a Unbreakable type thing and it'll be figured out later. Or, two, I haven't completely decided, so I don't want to change my answer right now.
Right.
Like, it's like one of those two things.
Because I also took it, when I heard both statements again, I kind of looked at it as, well, what if he was saying during that interview, because I could just see Jordan Peele like putting this much thought into it, what if during that interview Us was already done? And so he's talking about like the next movie that he plans on weaving them in because Us was already done. And so there wasn't really anything to weave into it.
Yeah. I don't know. It's interesting. But like I was saying before, like, they're not officially a part of a set or anything, but you can see it is, you can see like it's his, like this is his thing that he's got going on. But yes, that's kind of like what I was saying before. Like I left the theater with Us feeling like I missed out on some of the cleverness that was in Get Out. And so I think that's me. I think, well, first of all, I just had higher expectations, I guess, probably because of Get Out.
Right.
Where Get Out, I kind of went in with just, well, we'll see what this is about.
Right.
Like, it looks good, but we'll see.
Like, previews are previews. Previews are supposed to make it look good.
Right. So I didn't know. But this one I had higher expectations, and so that could be part of it too. But I did leave feeling just a little dissatisfied. Well, more than a little just like, dang.
So I do have a couple of Easter eggs that I noticed that, like, in the video you guys were watching earlier aren't mentioned. So like when I mention them, if you guys didn't notice them either, it might help kind of bring that like creativeness and make you appreciate it a little bit more. I don't know. But yeah, there's like some really small detailed things that like when I either after the movie or I noticed a couple of them during the movie, I was like, all right, I like that. It's not a huge like Easter egg, but like it makes sense and I like what it adds to the movie. So yeah, we'll just so everybody knows, probably towards the end we'll talk more so about some of the Easter eggs that we all noticed and whether we think they're true or if we think some of them are complete bullshit. And just give our thoughts on that. Obviously, Jordan hasn't confirmed a single Easter egg. He probably never will. But as fans, it's always fun to kind of talk about little stuff like that.
Yeah. All right. Hit us with them.
Okay. I was just saying, what are we going to talk about now?
I figured he was going to do the Easter eggs.
He said at the end.
Oh, at the end. My bad.
Going to talk about anything else.
Okay.
Well, did you, Chuck, did you like give your overall? Okay. I couldn't remember.
I did. There's only one other like really point I'd make, and that would just be to like talk about what I think I didn't like the most about the movie.
Okay.
Yeah, I can just do that.
Well, we can go into dislikes then, and then do the Easter eggs at the end.
Well, I don't think we necessarily even did likes, but I'll just do a quick thing. Like, all the performances are great. Like every single person did a very good job.
So since you mentioned that, I was gonna mention like when I talk next, Lupita killed it. Like she was absolutely amazing. And I know that, horror typically doesn't get like Oscar nods, especially for like Best Actress and stuff like that. But man, I know it's, and again, I also know it's early in the year, but I would not be mad if she got nominated for her portrayal in this movie.
We'll see.
Yeah, definitely.
We will see.
I feel like this is the type of horror film where it would work better as opposed to like what are like some of the popular like
Nightmare on Elm Street or some shit like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll see like the type of buzz she gets and everything like that. Because I'm still telling you, yeah, you still probably haven't seen that Hereditary movie, right?
I know I watched it.
Oh,
You've asked me that like 3 times, and every time I'm like, yeah, I've seen it.
He didn't like it as much.
Oh, I don't know. I don't
watched
remember.
that, and he watched The Witch, like we recommended.
I don't remember hearing about
I
that.
listened to you, Zach.
Thank you, somebody. Jeez.
Anyways, I feel like one thing you probably can agree on in that movie is Toni Collette, who plays the mother, is amazing in that role. And so, like, that's kind of like my standard, like, right now, where I was like, if she didn't get nominated for, like, not even, like, just the Oscars, she didn't get Golden Globes, like, if she didn't get nominated for anything for that performance, I don't know for, any other horror movie.
Right.
I do feel like because of what happened with Get Out and Jordan and how well this is seemingly being received, it is possible. It is possible.
Yeah, I give it, I mean, out of the possibility, I would say maybe like 10%. But because it's certainly not still likely. I would still be a little bit shocked if she did get nominated, but I do think she at least she deserves to be nominated, whether she gets it or not. That's a totally different subject. But I think as far as like the movies that we've gotten so far this year, she's done the best as far as like the women's side of absolutely just killing the performance that she had.
Yeah,
sure,
incredible.
I'd agree. I was gonna say real quickly, my only like thing that really stuck with me, like that I didn't like or was like really dissatisfied about in the movie, is like going along with the whole kind of abstractness. I wanted to have a more clear understanding as to what I guess Red's plan with the tethered was. Like, what exactly was she trying to accomplish? I was taking it as just kind of like, that was kind of like an announcement, just kind of like showing like we exist.
That's exactly what it was.
Okay, well, I don't know. I'm still a little underwhelmed with that, I guess. Like, I would want more, or like, I would like to think of like what was next. And then I also going along with it, like, it doesn't seem like their mental capacity is so low that they wouldn't be able to, not necessarily on a large scale like they did, very organized, but I feel like something could have happened beforehand, because we didn't show, like, we weren't shown any sort of government agency still running these facilities or anything like that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure abandoned that.
And like you said, we don't know how long it's been since they were instituted. So and also what the full number is of these people. Like, was this an experiment that was only conducted in like the greater Santa Cruz area, and so everybody that is the clone or whatever is based off of like this kind of geographical area? And if so, then how many numbers are there? Because they show that scene later when they're kind of going down.
Right. That's why I was going to say.
Everything like that.
That's why I was going to say, I think it's safe to assume that it's not just in this local area, because that scene shows like just basically miles of people, and it doesn't seem to show where it's ending. So I kind of just take, and I know we didn't get the answer for it, but I figured I looked at it as it was kind of safe to assume that. And also in the beginning of the movie, when they were talking about the underground train systems all across America and there not being, a need for them, I kind of put that as, if you're going to mention all of these across America, then this is something that's spread throughout the underground of America. And so they are all over the country. And yeah, yes, it would have been nice to get a little bit more, a little bit more of an understanding to it. I totally get that. But I don't think Jordan, I don't think he likes to give away that much information. Like, I was honestly surprised that he made it very clear that Red was the original little girl. I'm surprised, like, he made that very clear from the get-go. Because it was kind of, you could point it out before he, made the statement. I was kind of looking at it. There were just certain things that, their mom had done that I was like, she has some like tendencies that the tethered have. Is she really, the same little girl, or did something happen where they were switched? So I think you still could have came to that conclusion without him giving you that answer.
Yeah, I came to that conclusion real early.
Yeah.
But I think that's part of why I'm saying like I was kind of missing some of the cleverness, because I realized that, or at least like I was like, yeah, that's probably what's going to happen before we were even introduced to the tethered, before we even see them for the first time, right? So like I knew it when she was explaining like about the stuff. We had that flashback where her mom's like, I just want my little girl back. I'm like, they switched. Like it was super quick.
I will admit, I didn't notice it the first time we saw that scene, but by the second time we saw it, I was like, okay, yeah.
Yeah, because the second time it was used when she was like actually like explaining the stuff too. But yeah, I think that was partially my thing. Is I felt like this movie was very, it was easy to anticipate. Like I didn't feel like a sense of, not necessarily surprise, because I don't need to feel surprise in horror films. That's not something where I'm like, that's what makes or breaks it to me. But I think, given the abstract nature of the plot line, I think it was potentially intended for that, and the fact that I was able to figure it out within like 20 minutes of the movie starting, I'm like, okay. So that was disappointing. I kept waiting for like a second thing, like just like another little bit. I'm like, oh no, we're not getting it.
I think that second thing was the son.
Yes, but that's kind of what I'm saying is we don't really know. We don't know for sure. And I think the best way for me to like try to just say what I'm trying to figure out is, because I don't want somebody to misunderstand me when I'm saying like I feel like I was missing some of the cleverness there, because I'm not trying to say that this movie wasn't clever, because it was. You could like, there's a lot of like underneath, and things have meanings that aren't like incredibly obvious and stuff like that, and it is. It's got a very pointed message that isn't like really apparent unless you're like taking all of these things in together. So in that way it is. But the actual like plot line, I feel like wasn't great, or at least not as good as like Get Out. With Get Out, the plot line, like what drives the story, was clever. Here, the plot line, what drives the story, I feel like was just okay, and I feel like I'm left relying on like what the hidden message, like what Jordan's trying to actually communicate by this, as opposed to having that as well as a self-sufficient plot line. Because I kind of like what Charles was saying, like we didn't really get, some things weren't fleshed out, where it's like things were like left intentionally vague, and that's fine sometimes, but I feel like the things that we had explained to us, I didn't necessarily need them explained to me, because I felt like it was kind of clear. Like you yourself was saying, like you see things as you go, and like by the end, like you know, like we didn't necessarily have to have that outright explained. And then there was other things where I was like, well, I'm kind of missing this. Like, why didn't we flesh this out a little bit? Like, are just intentionally vague. So I think it's between those things where I'm like, I'm kind of confused and I guess underwhelmed with the things I did have explained, especially in light of the things where I'm like, well, why didn't we talk about this a little bit more?
That's fair. Absolutely.
I'm not a big fan of like it being really such like a kind of microcosm focused story. Like we're just focused for the most part on how this incident is affecting the lives of this family, or like I guess kind of two families, but one of them pretty quickly is done, and then like we're staying focused on that one
real fast.
I guess I didn't like how we were like kind of juxtaposing that with not getting really any real like concrete details on like what's happening at large, but it's slowly growing into a larger thing, if that makes any sense.
I got you.
Yeah. But still, all that said, it's still I can't by any means say like it's a bad movie or
Definitely not.
that I even didn't like it or anything like that. It's just especially like coming off of what we've seen from him before, I had a more enjoyable experience with the first film I saw from him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, all fair. They're both great movies. I don't think it would, like, if someone were to say that they preferred Us over Get Out or Get Out over Us, like, I wouldn't feel that either one is like a dumb answer. Like, it's obvious that one is better than the other. So yeah. And so I think I'll go over a couple of the small like Easter eggs that I noticed. I'll start with the names of some of the tethered. Oh, actually no, before I go into this, I do want to say going into the movie, I thought that it might be one of those situations again where the white people were the bad guys. I'm really glad it wasn't. Because I think that causes, if it was, it causes a couple of issues with Jordan Peele that people would have complained about. And also, just what we got overall was fantastic. So yeah, I was a little bit surprised that it wasn't the like friends that, were like they were stalking this family for years and had this facility where they trained these people to move like them, look like them, and all this stuff. Because that's kind of how the trailers made it seem like it was going to go, maybe in that direction. And also based on what we got with Get Out, you kind of may have thought that that's the direction he was going. But I'm really glad that wasn't it at all. So yeah. But anyway, as far as some of the Easter eggs, some of my favorites were the names of the tethered, especially the kids of Red and Red. So there's Zora Wilson. Her tethered, the evil girl, her name is Umbri, which is the plural form of Umbra, which means the darkest part of a shadow during the total phase of eclipse. And so in the movie, it talks about how these people they're the shadows of people who live above ground. So I thought that was a pretty clever name to give her in that situation. And then Jason, his name was Pluto, which is a dwarf planet who got its name because it's so far away from the sun. It exists in perpetual darkness. And with him also being obsessed with fire and the bright light it provides, Pluto would love to be surrounded by, probably more sunlight than it gets. And again, it lives in complete darkness, so it goes into that them being the shadows of the people who live above ground. So I thought that was kind of an interesting thing, that he played with the names a little bit like that. Did you guys? So I knew about the Umbra right away. And even though Pluto is more common, I probably should have noticed that right out the way. It was not the one that I noticed. It was not the one that the one that I connected.
No, that's what I was gonna say. Like, of all of the two, the one that you were like, oh, that's so odd. But hey, props to you. Not what I was expecting at all.
Yeah, and when I did see it, I was like, you're such an idiot. You got Umbra right off the bat, and you couldn't get Pluto?
That is interesting. That's very interesting.
I honestly think it was because I didn't really notice what his name was until like later in the movie, because like people were talking a little bit in the theater, and so like I missed them say his name during that introduction part. But still, I was like, man, I should have got that.
Oh, that's really funny.
And then first of all, did you guys like put the names together, like either one of them together, as far as like what their actual meaning was and how it kind of connects to?
I didn't remember hearing their names.
Yeah. No.
All right.
But you've seen it. How many times have you seen it now?
3.
Yeah, we've just seen it the one time.
Well, okay. So I noticed Umbra on the first one.
Okay.
But yeah, I did notice Pluto for a minute.
Yeah, no, I didn't notice. I heard them say the names, but I think because it's not like they go around like having conversation
Right.
stuff like that. I didn't pay anything. I didn't pay attention to it at all.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Then during the opening scene, when Adelaide is watching the Hands Across America commercial, you can see a couple of VHS tapes. One of them is called Chud. It's a hyphenated, or not hyphenated, but like it's CHUD. Chud is about an underground civilization making its way above ground. And then the second VHS is of the Goonies. If you don't know what the premise of the Goonies is, like, you know, I'm not even gonna, I'm not having that conversation with you. Let's see. My favorite little Easter egg that I noticed was the connection and how big of a deal the Thriller shirt was. Not only did Adelaide, after she got, switched, did she remember it? If you notice, all of the tethered wear one glove on their hand, like Michael Jackson did. And so I think that was kind of on purpose, because that's just part of what she remembers from living on above. Let's see. And then the last two, yeah, I didn't really get I got the Jeremiah 11:11 like description. Like, I understood it was a Bible verse, but I will bring on them as a disaster. I guess it's, when the tethered finally did go above ground, there was nothing like that the people above ground could really do about it. I guess that would be the connection there as far as like what the verse says. But I'm not like the most religious person, so I could be like completely wrong.
Yeah, I think that's basically what it is. But I think there's very few people out there who, when they saw Jeremiah 11:11, like knew what that verse was. Yeah. Because, we had to go look it up, so we're like, what does that say? So I seriously doubt that was a connection that most people made in the theater, unless you just happen to have that verse memorized.
And I sure don't. The video we were watching earlier, though, I did like, because I wasn't really paying full attention to it, though, with Adelaide, her eating strawberries while everybody else was like eating regular food. And then when he was talking about it's because she remembers having to eat raw rabbits while she was underground and she doesn't really want to eat meat and stuff like that. I thought that was pretty clever. And a nice little hint as to who she really was, especially that early in the movie. But yeah, that was one I didn't catch. Was there like anything you guys noticed off the bat that like we haven't talked about, or that you guys enjoyed?
Like things like that, I don't think. I was trying to think of what some of the stuff the guy said in the movie that I was like, oh, that's something. Or not the movie though.
I didn't know how much you'd want to talk about that without like plugging that guy potentially or whatnot.
We can. I don't remember. So we were watching, because we've talked about this before. We don't necessarily have the patience to watch a movie and write down every single Easter egg that we notice. So that way we could talk to you guys a little bit more about it. I had watched one on YouTube. It is called Us Ending Explained and Hidden Twists You Missed. It's made by, the name of his profile is 3C Films. He had some interesting, takes on stuff, and we didn't agree with all of them, but you could see how, you could kind of get to that point. And then we also talked about how, even though I think it was more so which one was it? Was it the sun being switched, or what? Which one was it? Where? Oh no, what did you send me on Twitter?
Oh, just the idea of the tethered being a metaphor for poverty. I almost said poverty.
Yes.
Or the poverty, for the improvised.
Yeah. And this guy, he he looked at them as what did he look at them as again?
He basically was saying like whoever has the microphone has the most power. So underneath, that's basically Adelaide, or because she's not the true Adelaide, since she's the one that can speak. That, like it says in the movie, like they recognize that she was different, like all this other stuff, that she has the power and set up for basically just mass murders across the globe.
Yeah,
not across the globe, nation.
Across the nation, yeah. And I had mentioned that, like, because I do believe that, yes, poverty has something to do with it. And so it is kind of like the whoever has the mic controls things. I think it can totally be both. And I can see where you can come to that conclusion on either one. If you guys, whoever's watching this, if you guys have a different opinion as far as like what the tethered meant, or, if you guys have comments about like what we've kind of talked about as far as how we looked at them and what they meant to us, definitely comment. We love to interact with you guys on this stuff and have in-depth conversation if you've seen it. Is there anything else that we want to go over with it, or?
I think that's it for me, at least. I think.
Yeah, I mean.
So, if there's really nothing in depth else that we want to go over with it, how about we end on a grade out of 10?
Okay.
Who wants to go first?
Sai's going first.
Okay, all right. I think I'll give it. I think I'll give it an 8 out of 10. Oh,
yep, you're good. I think I'm gonna go a 6.5.
I think I was gonna do 7.
Yeah.
I think I was gonna do 7.
Yeah.
Off of one viewing.
Viewing. It might change as like time goes and stuff.
I feel like it definitely could be something where it could change over time.
But yeah, I mean, it's a great horror film. Like people should, or whatever it is, like people should still go see it. It's definitely worth seeing.
And hey, the whole, however you look at it, hey, if you don't think it's horror, that's fine. Technically, Jordan Peele, he specifically said it's horror. So I do tend to, whatever the creator tells me it is, I typically just kind of go with all right, that's what it is.
Whether that's their vision for it.
Yeah. Whether I agree with that or not. So if he says it's horror, and that's all that really matters.
Well, I don't think if you really like horror films, I don't think this is something where you're going to walk out being like, that was trash. And if you don't really feel horrors as much, but you're like, oh, but I really enjoy thrillers, I don't think you're going to leave being like, frick, that was a horror film and I hated every minute of it. Yeah. There's still enough of like an overlap of them in this movie in particular where I feel like people who enjoy both sets you'll be fine. You'll really like this movie.
Yeah, absolutely. I will notice some of the like people that I interact with online and stuff, and a couple of them are like really, really into horror, like they're horror buffs all around. I've noticed the majority of them haven't really loved the movie. They don't hate it, but I would say most would probably, Kelsey's grade of a 6.5, that's probably where most of them would land. Maybe even a couple would give it like a 5, which is, I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing or a bad thing moving forward, but I've just noticed that most horror buffs didn't love the movie. And a lot of them were really, really looking forward to it. So that's just like an interesting tidbit that I thought I'd throw in there. But since we got nothing else to add for you guys, I want to thank you for watching, listening, however you're taking in the content. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube, like us on Facebook, share the videos with your friends, comment, have discussions with us. Obviously, we'd love to have those conversations and get your guys' opinion. But with that said, gonna say good night for myself. Again, I'm Sai. Got my man Chuck here. And
I thought he was gonna keep going. My bad.
I was gonna give you a second to say bye if you wanted to.
Bye,
guys.
Just deuces. All right. And then we got Kelsey.
Bye, guys. Go see us.